Greetings all, and welcome to Lucas Brews. In this video, we'll be doing a inbox review of the Hasegawa 1/72nd scale Mitsubishi Ki-15, known as the BABS, which is a light reconnaissance aircraft from, I believe, the mid to late 1930s that saw a little bit of action at the opening stages of World War II. So without further ado, let's have a look at this old kit. So starting out with the box, we have a classic painted artwork of a Babs flying along through the sky, and it's being pursued by two Chinese P-40, probably E models of the Kitty Hawk, which looks pretty nice. They've done it in the brown and green camouflage with the nice red rising suns on the sides. A little bit of weathering here and there, looks pretty nice. Then we've basically just got the titles of the aircraft and the scale. On the side of the box here, we have one of the schemes included. It looks like it's in the Japanese kind of grey with a black engine cowling. And a repeat of the box art on a small square here. A few more little details, manufactured by Hasegawa and their address. Then on the side here, repeat of the box art. And on the top we have some ads for more of their kits. Another repeat of the box art on that side, and on the underside here we have just a empty box. So yeah, pretty simple little box and very vintage looking with the old logo. Looks pretty nice with that artwork on the front there. And yeah, I like the little pilots too. One of them's obviously looking at the attackers, and the other guy doesn't seem to know what's going on. He's sort of looking at his instruments. Opening up, as you can see, we have a set of instructions here and a single plastic bag containing the sprues and the decals. So we'll start off by having a look at the instructions and seeing how this kit goes together. Well, these instructions are interesting. They're sort of a fold-out leaflet, pamphlet kind of format. I'm usually more of a fan of the booklet format, so this is kind of a bit annoying, but oh well, I'm sure on the other side you can, you can fold it and make it a bit smaller if you want to. But anyways, on the front here we have a nice little picture of a built, looks like a model of it. Then we've got all of the details about the aircraft. Unfortunately, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't really know what it is for saying. But I'm assuming it's a bit of history about the aircraft, along with its specifications, and probably a bit about the requirements that it had when it was being designed. On the front, we've also got the marking guides here. And I believe the colour guides are Humbrol with those little numbers there, and also a Japanese translation or a word for what the colour is, you know, like black or something like that. But we've got, looks like two different schemes. One from 1938, and it's sort of a tricolour camouflage with the brown, the green, and the grey on the underside, which is what we saw in the box art. Or we have a possibly earlier war scheme in the light grey, which is pretty standard for Japanese aircraft. And yeah, got pretty basic because there's not too many markings really to add, just the couple of decals for the roundels and the tail on the light grey version. So yeah, all pretty simple and yeah, a bit unusually laid out, but I think it is probably quite common in some older kits. Then on the back side here we have our instructions. Starting off with step 1, which is the assembly of the engine. It looks like you have a piece here with all of the cylinders. Then you've got 3 separate parts for the exhausts. A small spinner insert here to hold the propeller in place, and you've also got the propeller itself. So looking at that, I'd say if you put the propeller in there and attach that part without gluing it to the cylinders, you'll be able to rotate the propeller. Then on the front of the engine, we have the massive spinner, which is for aerodynamic streamlining purposes, I believe. So that goes onto the prop, and then you attach it to this little piece here, which is, I'm assuming, that kind of section in the front of the fuselage. Then we have step 2, which covers our cockpit assembly. And as you can see, for an old kit, there's quite a little bit of detailing. You've got a separate part here for the instrument panel, you've got a control column, looks like a fair bit of detailing on the floor itself, a bulkhead connecting to the observer's position, 2 seats, and another bulkhead leading to the rear of the aircraft, and it looks like some sort of detail on the floor there of the cockpit. Then you attach the cockpit floor and all of those details to the fuselage halves, as you can see. And it looks like there's even possibly some details on the fuselage, but we'll have to have a look. Before joining the second fuselage half, you have to add on these small side windows here for the observer's position. Although I reckon it's probably going to be better to use something like Microsol or like Crystal Clear to do those windows rather than using the clear parts. But at this stage you would install them in. Then you attach the fuselage halves to the wings. The wings themselves are made up of 3 sections, so you have a single lower piece and then 2 upper pieces, and then you have these single piece elevators or horizontal stabilizers for the rear. Here we have the landing gear, which is 2 halves, a bit like a Stuka with those massive fairings over the top of them. Then it looks like we have an observation window at the bottom there, a few little antennas, and the tail wheel. On the upper surface here, we then have all of these navigation equipments and compasses and that sort of thing that go on the top for the fuselage there. And once you put them into place, you can then add the canopy frame. You then got this strange little piece here, which I'm assuming is a pitot tube, followed by a little radio mast that goes at the front of the fuselage. And then you can install the engine and add the 2 cowling halves over the top of that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for assembly. There's a few little bits on the side here, which are unfortunately in Japanese, so I can't really understand them. But I'm assuming there's something to do with the identification of the parts, as well as a little bit of a beginner's guide with some instructions on how to do things like cut the parts out and glue the kit together and do the painting. So yeah, instructions, I'm sure they're better if you speak Japanese, but in general they're pretty easy to follow and pretty typical of an old Hasegawa kit. And here we have our plastic bag containing our sprues, which I will now open up. So it looks like we have 3 grey sprues and a clear sprue. Yep, there we go. Starting off with this sprue, we have the fuselage, the horizontal stabilizers, and the landing gear and cowling there. As you can see, they've gone with recessed details for the fuselage. They're pretty shallow and a bit weak, but honestly, pretty cool, and I'd say it's pretty cutting edge for the time that this kit came out. There is a little bit of raised detailing on the fabric control surfaces there, but yeah, that's also pretty subtle and weak. So I am kind of tempted to get a panel scriber, but maybe it is better to keep it nice and shallow. Looks pretty good, honestly. Then we've got our wheels here, which are molded to the fairings. Again, recessed details, all looking pretty good. And yeah, there doesn't seem to be too many imperfections or flashing in any bad spots. Horizontal stabilizer, again, the elevators have raised details for the ribbing, for the fabric, and there's some recessed panel lines, which look pretty good. Engine cowlings have recessed panel lines there, and there is a little bit of a funny scratched kind of texture to them, but I don't think it's like surface detail. I think it's just the plastic, so it should be nice and smooth still. On the inside here, there's not really any detail. There's just this kind of little instrument panel there, which is some raised detailing. There are a few ejector pin marks, but they're all pretty subtle, and there is a bit of flashing on the inside of the landing gear that might need to be cleaned up so that they join together. But otherwise, they've done a pretty good job with this. It's pretty cleanly molded. I am tempted to add some extra detailing if I can find some good references for the babs. Otherwise, I might just let it be as it is. Moving on, we have our other fuselage half, which is pretty much the exact same. It's got recessed details with a little bit of raised details for the fabric there. We have our cockpit floor here, which has a raised kind of corrugated texture to it, plus some rudder pedals molded in, a few little controls, and a sort of strange box here with an X, which I'd assume would be a camera or something like that, in that kind of housing. So yeah, they've done a nice job doing a little bit of detailing for the floor there. I'm definitely appreciating that. We've got this kind of piece here which attaches to the fuselage for the engine mount to be put on. Another set of wheels there, again looking pretty good. And we've got our spinner here, which has a fair bit of flashing on it, which is going to need a bit of cleanup. We've also got some other small parts here, such as the various navigation equipment. Looks like part of the seat, the control column, our rather strange looking pitot tube, another little antenna there, and the absolutely microscopic looking tail wheel there. We've also got this little bulkhead here, which doesn't really have any detailing on it. We've got our exhausts here, which are pretty, yeah, there's a fair bit of flash on them, so that's going to require a bit of cleanup. And looks like they've done the 3 exhausts kind of molded together strangely, which looks a little bit fiddly, but I'm sure with a little bit of cleanup that'll look quite good. Then we have our pilot's seat, which has a rather nasty mark on there, or like a flash sink mark there, so that will require a little bit of cleanup. The engine itself looks pretty nice actually. They've done all of the detailing on the cylinders and all the wiring. It's sort of a mixture of raised and recessed details, so yeah, that looks really quite good. And as you can see, there's this massive kind of aerodynamic shield over the gearbox assembly, so you don't see an awful lot of the engine really on this aircraft. But what engine you do see looks pretty nice. Our propeller looks pretty good. There's a little bit of flashing on the edges there, but nothing a little bit of light sanding can't fix. And finally, we have our main instrument panel there, which is all very, very faint raised details. And we've also got the rear observer's position with like a radio stack and a small table. Might be tempted to replace them with 3D printed instrument panels just because of how weak the raised details are, and the fact that there's no decals included in this kit for the instrument panels. And they're quite large too, so yeah, I'll probably go down that route. But honestly, for the time, I'm sure it was pretty unique to have an aircraft with a nice cockpit with some attempt at some instrument panels. We've also got some throttle controls and a bit of a trim wheel visible on the inside of the fuselage half on this side, so yeah, looking pretty good. I should point out also there's some nice guide pins on all the parts, so it looks like it's going to assemble pretty good with just a little bit of sanding here and there for some of the nastier points of flashing, not that there's many. The final coloured sprue that we have, or the non-clear sprue, is the wing halves here, and as you can see, it's all very nicely done recessed panel lines with some very nice recessed access hatches and filler caps and that sort of thing. They've done a few little raised details, such as these control hinges there for the ailerons, and a little bit of a fabric-y kind of texture on the ailerons themselves, all looking pretty good. Not an awful lot of flash or anything really, and in fact I don't think there's any flash at all, other than these rather thick attachment points to the sprue, which might require a little bit of careful cutting and sanding. Looks like these wings are really quite nicely done. On the inside here, we have Hasegawa's classic logo and a little Made in Japan symbol there, moulded in. And all of the ejector pin marks are nice and subtle, so they're not going to cause any issues. And we have some nice lining up holes for the wings, so yeah, looks like it'll join and fit together pretty well and be quite nicely detailed, really. Finally, we have our clear parts, which, again, for the age of the kit, I think are pretty fantastic. They've done some very faint raised edges there for the panel lines, which should be relatively easy to paint. And despite the fact that there's a bit of a curve to the canopy, the distortion's not too bad. And yeah, transparency looks pretty good. They're rather small windows, really, for an aircraft for reconnaissance, but I think that's for streamlining. Like, compared to another aircraft canopy, it's pretty small, is what I'm trying to say. Some of the larger windows, like the rectangle here, have some nasty scratches on them, and these smaller windows for the side are, yeah, they're alright. And given that they're so small, I'm probably just going to replace them with crystal clear. But the main windows here look pretty decent. In terms of our decals, these are rather old and they've kind of changed colour a bit. There's only really your rising sun markings and then these little symbols for the tail. Unfortunately, they're quite old as well. As you can see, they've yellowed, and I think that the roundels are possibly a little bit too orange. I'm not sure if the camera's really picking up how orange they've gone. But yeah, compared to other aircraft kits, I think they're a little bit discoloured, so I might have to use some spare roundels or get some new ones. But yeah, they're pretty basic, not really too much to say about them, really. So that pretty much wraps up our look at the Babs. It was originally, according to ScaleMates, a 1973 tooling by Mania Hobby. And considering that that's how old this kit is, it's really quite impressive. It must have been really quite, for the time, cutting edge. I mean, it's got recessed panel lines, it's got a little bit of an interior with some, decent details, and yeah, in general, it seems like a pretty nice looking kit. As of the making of this video, I've actually, while editing, started work on it, and I'm nearly done, so it's also been quite a fun and simple build, so I can say it goes together pretty well. And yeah, I'm just really surprised and quite pleased with it considering how old it is. So if you're interested in some of the more obscure Pacific Theatre aircraft and you can get a hold of one of these, I'd definitely recommend it. Otherwise, I'm sure it's not for everyone because it is a little bit of a weird aircraft. I know Hasegawa have reissued it many times recently and it still seems to hold water, so yeah, if you can get one and you're interested, why not? Otherwise though, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it and got something out of it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to the channel. Big thank you to my wonderful patrons for helping me to fund buying these kits and the paints and products that I use. Looking forward to sharing the build video for this one in the not too distant future, but until then, as always, take care and model on.